Richards Bay Mineral Terminal will suspend all cargo going to its facilities. That's due to congestion. Trucks have been stuck on the road to the terminal, causing more bottlenecks on the road. Some drivers told Newzroom Afrika earlier this week that they spend 2 to 3 days in the queue before offloading. There's also tensions at the Lebombo border post between queuing truck drivers and taxi operators. We're now joined by Gavin of the Road Freight Association to dissect these issues. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. Truckers, logistics companies, there's a lot of frustration by the long queues at Richards Bay Port as well as the Lebombo border crossing. How is this affecting your members?
Well, good afternoon, Mpho, and good afternoon to all your viewers. You've heard what the truck drivers are saying, and you can imagine how the logistics companies are feeling. So in the first instance, there are now long queues either at the port trying to get into the port to offload the goods and get out, or trying to cross borders in the only other alternative that seems to be around to get that cargo through a different port, not a South African port. So there are huge delays, and those delays are not good either in terms of security. There's been a flare-up at the Lebombo border post this morning. At the moment, that seems to have quietened down, but there are still concerns that's going to turn nasty a little bit later again tonight with threats of certain people returning. But of course, these long queues, drivers are threatened, there's security, and of course it's not doing very much for us as a country in terms of exports. It costs money to get it out, and our customers out in the world are going to look at a place where it's cheaper to get whatever we're selling, where it's more reliable, and the risk is far, far lower.
I suppose, it would all boil down to some very important questions that need to be answered by Transnet. Of course, we've seen what's been happening there and how that could possibly be affecting some of the questions that need to be asked about the road congestion, why it's at this level and at this point of such uncontrollable levels.
Well, Mpho, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The first question we need to ask ourselves is, how did we get here? How did we not see ourselves getting here? And when those first signs started to raise their heads, how did we not fix them? Now there's this scramble to try and remedy the situation, and there's this talk about stopping trucks going through Richards Bay. Oh, that's all good and well. So what do we do with them? How did we allow the various things in that port to get to the situation where we can't move? Could we have not have managed it? More importantly, are we going to have quick fix situations that in their own process bring other unforeseen challenges? Or are we going to have long-term sustainable solutions that will ensure that this won't happen again or won't continue to happen?
Where do you believe the crux of the problem is when it comes to this level of frustration that we're seeing?
Well, Mpho, I think there are two things. I think the first thing is that the inflow of the commodity into the port, and let's start with Richards Bay first, that inflow hasn't been managed properly. If the systems in the port cannot accept road freight deliveries, that port was designed specifically in terms of coal and large ore, was designed for rail, and the loading systems and the gantries for the ships, if you want to call them that, the loading processes were designed for that. Then we needed to stagger the trucks coming in. And if this was going to be a long-term problem, we should then already have either built or managed alternative routes into the port or gone back to Transnet to find out what the issue was, because I'm sure we could have fixed that. There are reports from Transnet that ore line is running at less than 50% of its capacity. How did we get there? If we look at order in terms of Lebombo, there are a number of small things we can fix, and the association, the RFA, has had long discussions with SARS, and there are a couple of solutions that we're going to bring into play to remove these long queues. There it's a little bit more difficult. There is another country that we need to go through, and we need to get them to play at the same sort of level that we're playing at. And I think we probably need to see whether we can't, without playing Big Brother, try and assist them with whatever they need.
The transit port terminals, how are they falling into the picture when it comes to some sort of solutions to this escalating problem?
Well, if you look at their letter, Mpo, they have said, well, we can't handle this load. There are too many trucks coming to the port, and we're now going to stop those trucks coming in terms of those commodities. So one would have really wanted them at some time back to have said, all right, we can't handle this. Let's talk to the origin, to where this ore is coming from. Perhaps we should stage from the point of origin that you manage those flows. And if it's only, and I'm just picking figures, please, if it's only 20 trucks a day that we can deal with, then we only allow 20 trucks a day. 20 trucks a day are on that route. We don't take the 500 or 600 or whatever volume it is. There would be, at the initial, there would have been a slowdown, but there would have been a continual process. Trucks could have flowed in and out quite swiftly. Now you have these long queues of trucks standing all over the place. And obviously, that is not what we want to see.
Yeah. And I understand that as a result of this chaos, that some have now instituted legal action against transit port terminals, and that in itself hasn't received much of a response when it comes to resolving this problem.
Well, it's interesting that the first two bits of legal action, and I'm sure it's probably going to be the beginning of an outflow, but the first two bits come from local authorities or municipalities close to the port or in whose jurisdiction the port falls. They're saying, we can't manage this traffic volume. We don't have places to stage the trucks. We can't ensure that other road users are being kept safe. And we don't have the budget or the funding to keep traffic officers, those who are mandated to keep the road safe, continually employed. There, they've got other duties. So it's not surprising, and perhaps this is the best way for it to happen, because it's now happening between authorities. It's not, private sector's just upset and they run to the courts immediately. So I think it's a good thing.
And what do you believe now to be some of the long-term ramifications?
Well, first of all, there are a number of ships that are not being allowed into the port. That's also in the letter, that they're not going to allow ships to come in to get this cargo because they can't handle the volumes. So what do you think shipping companies are going to do? They're going to say, well, in that case, and I'll use an example, let's go to Maputo or let's go to Beira. And the mines or those producers of the goods that are being exported will then choose those destinations or those ports. Remember that the choice of mode of transport and its departure point, let's use that, or the border to cross, is determined by the customer, because the customer is trying to provide their customer, the person who bought the coal or whatever the goods are. So we can see, or we may see, definitely already have seen, a move of shipping companies to other ports that are far less congested and that are far more efficient. In the long term, we could find that customers around the world say, well, let's not bother buying things from South Africa. They might be a little bit more expensive elsewhere, whether that's in terms of the actual ground price or the dollar conversion rate. But if we buy from somewhere else, we get it far quicker. There's no striking, there's no delays, and we know we've got our product.
Very well. Thank you so much for that insight. Let's perhaps leave it there for now. Gavin Kelly of the Road Freight Association talking to us there about the chaos around the Richards Bay terminal, which continues moving transport to suspended cargo receiving. In other news,